So this meeting is being
Okay.
recorded. So the objective of this is, so Elijah has spent the last 25 years designing systems that gamify how people can come together and, you know, understand more about themselves, engagement, and create more harmonious ways of getting people together so that everyone's on the same page in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. And he's classified different types of, you know, conversation killers to understanding the values of different people when I'm myself, one-on-one and everything, and how people generally like to engage, to different types of containers of different types of meetings and everything as well. And so he spent 25 years figuring out how people get together and kind of codifying it in a way. And so he's come up with a lot of systems that that we're looking kind of to bring to market. And so Elijah, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just kind of and so right now he's got some things that he's mocked up with like local artists and everything. But it's still kind of, you know, there's, you know, from a design perspective, it's inconsistent design, fonts and everything. And, you know, they did some coloring and they did the best they could with what they had at the time, I'm sure. But the idea is to bring it to corporate and everything. We'd like to really, you know, make it like really, really beautiful and make it consistent and everything, and really look at how we can turn them into tools that bring people together. And so right now, what I've got here is a team. So there's Elijah here, and then ideally to kind of oversee it on my side with me is Laurel, and then I'm just and so Laurel has written a book called Interplay, and she's been working on bringing kind of creative processes and culture engineering to companies and everything. And so, and then she has kind of a programming background, design background, and I'm actually hiring her into PolyU. Lucas, who's the fat bird right now, is a master's student right now who came to my office looking for a project. I showed him with this and he's got excited, and he's still sorting out what he wants to do after he graduates. And so I told him, hey, help us out with this, project manage this thing, and, you know, work with Elijah and everything and Laurel, and look at producing these cards. And, you know, I've got other art groups and everything, you know, I can bring to the table for this as well too. And then work out a Kickstarter campaign, social media marketing, and all this other stuff. You know, I supervised his independent study, and I know he's capable of doing this kind of thing. And so there's him. Simon is an academic, or teaches in our master's program. So he teaches project management. The reason why he's here is I'd like him to get a sense of this too. He can help to oversee this and work with Lucas as well too on kind of the development of and rollout of this, and make sure we have a good plan for it. But then also I'd like whatever we do with this to incorporate it into our teaching. And so a lot of the aids and the tools that we will do for this, I'd like Simon to also, you know, bring into the successful project management class. And so these devices and tools can also be used as part of the class and everything too. And so we can apply this kind of in an education context. Part of it on the one-on-one and stuff I may use for recovering creativity, but I think a large part of this works well for Simon's class in successful project management. And so I'm looking at kind of Simon, you know, to help, you know, Simon and Laurel to kind of work with Lucas kind of on this on our side, and then Laurel will help. In between Laurel and Simon, work with Lucas to work out like a good Gantt chart, you know, what resources are needed and everything. And then Laurel will also be looking at how do we bring this to the local market in Hong Kong, and then also potentially to the China market. And so after the project is done, we'll do like an English version, and then we'll also do maybe a Chinese version as well too, that then Lucas can and Laurel can do to the local market, and we can bring it across all of China. And so, the role of this meeting is that for all of you to kind of get to know each other, number one. Number two is Elijah. I've asked Elijah to think out a structure, because right now all of the IP belongs to Elijah. And then, so we need to work out, ideally, a relationship where ideally, Lucas, Laurel, and maybe even Simon, they can kind of get compensated in some way. And maybe we do like the China market and then international market and everything, and figure out like royalty percentages or something like that across, that. And I'm happy to, I'll probably talk to Elijah on that, and we can have that group discussion, but I want Elijah to start thinking about that. And then Simon, if you want to be involved with that too, but I was thinking of you mainly in our master's program and in teaching, and hopefully with tools like this, project, the IMPD, the FYP projects groups will move more smoothly, and then a lot of it can relate to the onboarding, so the reason I know about this is I know of Elijah from other groups that I in conversation with, but now his program, parts of his program are used by this La Ciel training and everything. And so the way I envisage it, it'll be kind of a understanding of there will be kind of the redesign of the cards and the materials. We're going to do like a Kickstarter campaign. And then even with the cards and materials, we might do some stuff. I was thinking of like augmented reality or animation or teaching aids to teach people what the cards mean and everything. And this could be videos, but we could use augmented reality where if you have your phone and you put the card up, it'll show you, an example of what's meant by the conversation killer. And so rather than flipping through a book, you just have an app or something like that. And then we could build an app, with this as well too in the future. And so there are all of these ways in which we can kind of go. And so the objectives today are to each get to know each other, understand our contexts and our roles in this project, see if we still want to do it. And then the other big thing is to have Elijah, go through, I only know like 2 of the systems, but he's got like at least 6 different systems. And so we should, I just want to kind of hear them all out to see what are the low-hanging fruit and how, which ones would we bring to market and which one would we launch with, and, get maybe a pipeline of things happening to create like a whole overall system. And if this works well, then Lucas will have a job and a career, Elijah will have more financial security and stability, and Laurel as well too will have another platform to kind of bring to market and everything. And then it can be beneficial. Part of this good too, just to let you also know, Simon is teaching in our master's program, project management. He's got a lot of industry experience with this. But the other thing that he's also doing is he's been working with aged, people in Hong Kong that are like very old, and they actually send people to go have conversations with them and everything. And so, having ways of creating containers to bring people together in meaningful ways is of interest there too. And he's involved with a lot of charities and everything in that space.
Yeah. Thanks, Gino. It's good.
Do we want to go around, sort of maybe give a download of your background and what you're interested in?
Sure. Kind of self-introduction.
Are you waiting for an introduction from me? Is that?
No. Anyone can go. I can go. Okay. Yeah, as Gino mentioned, my name is Simon Yang. I actually just joined the PolyU 2 years ago. Before that, I worked for Cisco System for 25 years and then took an early retirement. So now I teach part-time, as Gino mentioned. I focus on operation, project management, how to bring idea to concept, to implementation, and how to go to the market. So that's what I been doing in Cisco as well. So now just teaching their graduate student, help them with their ideas. We have what we call the FYP, final year project. They have to actually have ideas, concept, and throughout the 1 year program, by the end of this summer, actually they had to create a project and release to the market, and their grade will be based on how the market or the user accepting their product, right? How many user they usually in our degrees they usually build games, apps, multimedia products. So that's why I'm coaching them throughout the summer. So as Gino also mentioned, on the other side, now I involve a lot of NGO type of work, specifically focusing on elderly. So because personal reason, my parents were pretty old, and I will get old one times. Just want to help people, also kind of learning what's kind of the challenge facing, at least for the elderly in Hong Kong, and what resource help them available. So that's the area I'm focusing, and also food banks. So I'm familiar with many NGOs in Hong Kong and working as volunteer, both from just helping out or IT, digitalization, all those type of things. Okay, that's me.
You want to go, Laurel?
So I am from Hong Kong, have been away for a while, 15 years. And then, but yeah, in between, I had background in engineering, started my career in health tech, and gone into coaching, focus on students, and then start founders, and sometimes burnout execs. And so, what I found was that wellness and consciousness is a huge component in getting individuals and teams to be able to elevate collective intelligence. And so, and my involvement in Gino's community is being able to understand how to bring more of these very capable facilitators and understand how to elevate their profiles and create events together. And so, I have a group that meets together, creative technologists and consultant meet together and talk about how do you build a home for dialogues. And so this is why it's very intriguing for me, this project. And so looking to learn more about the experience you have and the ethos of your project. So.
Okay, thank you. Wu?
So hi, yeah. Hi, Lei. I'm Lucas. Yeah.
Can we?
So as Gino mentioned, can you hear me?
Yeah, but can I see you? I'm looking at a.
Sorry, I'm eating my breakfast.
Oh.
Sorry. So as Gino mentioned, I'm a master student now, and I will graduate this year. And now I'm doing my final year project. So I was trying to find some opportunity to enlarge my skills, or maybe to find a job in the future. And before that, I was major in advertising. So I think I'm good at marketing, at promotion, video or something in the social medias. And I have been doing a lot of things about that. Have some internship to, and I mean, all my work and all my things doing is related to these areas. And also this is my career goal in the future. So that is why I'm looking for this opportunity to see what will happen for me. Yes.
Finished? That's it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I guess I'll give a bit of a background in terms of what this whole idea is. Right behind me is called the Time Translator. And what it is it's a multi-cyclical, sort of like a time map, where you're looking from the purple is your lifetime, and that's the zodiac. And you can put your birth chart there if you're into astrology, but it's basically where all the larger cycles are, right? That we use to give ourselves a sense of time. The blue wheel, the next wheel in, is 1 year. So we're going from a lifetime to years, where there's 13 moons. And then at the aquamarine is 1 moon, 28 days, and then the green is 1 day. So the day fits in the division of the moon, and then the moon fits into the division of the year, and then you have your lifetime. So you got lifetime, year, lunar, and day. Then you have a switch point where you have 20 signs from the Mayan calendar. I don't know if is anyone here familiar with the Mayan calendar at all? It's a very elaborate calendar system where they had, I think, 23 different calendars, and they worked on a more of a 1320 time signature. This is a connection into it. It's called the Time Translator, but essentially each one of those are 20 positions for people. It's like the main building block of the universe is a tetrahedron. And I don't know if you know Buckminster Fuller, Bucky Fuller at all. He talked about the geometry of thinking. And he said the reason why our world is not sustainable is because we're using the cube and an XYZ axis instead of a tetrahedron as the main reference point. And that's like getting down to the basic structures of how we do math and organize things. And Buckminster Fuller was way ahead of his time. So one of the ideas is like geometry of thinking is putting words on sacred geometry, with the assumption that sacred geometry is how the universe is actually structured. And that when you put mental concepts on it, you change the type of thinking you have, and you're really going into abstract thought. And so the 20 is actually a tetrahedron divided by 4, like every part going into 4, creating 16. And then you have the original 4. And so you have 16 plus 4 is 20. So it's kind of like whole systems thinking, and certain numbers are very important in whole systems thinking. The pink one is an hour. The orange is minutes. The red is present moment. And then at the center point, it's timelessness. And if you see this shot of energy going up, that depicts levels of consciousness. And so in the timelessness, whether you're looking at the 7 chakras or you're looking at Stephen Hawkins, I don't know if you know, he has an enlightenment scale from 0 to 1,000 where you can measure consciousness. There's different models out there that have levels of consciousness, whether it's from the Buddhist point of view or the Hindu tradition. Different worldviews have different levels of consciousness. So what this is doing, it's putting cycles of time together with levels of consciousness on one map. And that's something I've never seen before. And so this is the foundational structure for something called the inflow matrix operating system. Information flowing information flowing in a matrix. Let me just change a map for a sec. So there's a lot of maps. Sorry it takes so long. Now, if you look at this map, it's essentially a time cone where you have the past, the present moment, and the future. And we're looking at the past as being the old paradigm, the future being the new paradigm, and that you're making a choice between where you want to focus your attention, on the past or in the future. Now, in the future, you have the beginning of the inflow matrix where you have the inner individual, the outer individual, the inner group, and the outer group. Are you guys familiar with Ken Wilber? And Ken Wilber is a transpersonal psychologist who's come up with something called the 4 quadrants and spiral dynamics. He's quite well known, and it's a model that sort of organizes all knowledge. And he used the dyad of the individual and the group, the inner and the outer, as 2 axes to create the inner individual, the outer individual, the inner group, and the outer group. So it's very common to everybody. Like we are all an individual, we're all part of a group, we both have an inner and outer. So he was looking at universal models to organize information. And so if you look at this map behind me, and you have, again, the inner individual, the outer individual, the inner group, and the outer group, that's inside me, outside me, the group that we're in right now, and then the community we're in. And so those four interfaces are the main interfaces on the operating system called the inflow matrix. And so what I was looking for was universal language to organize any job, any business, and any community, and then have them structured on wheels instead of squares, and organize the mind in a very different manner than is currently done. So that, like, there's a paradigm shift from organizing in squares to organizing in circles. And I did find a software system that was actually organized by circles. It's the only one I've ever come across, called NewMap. Gino, did you ever come across NewMap with Brett? It was a drag and drop that you would navigate through the noosphere, navigate through the internet by sort of like tunneling. And the software was the first software that could kind of use what I've got, because what I have is a language structure. It's a language structure that I put on maps and card sets. And so the idea behind putting it on card sets was then you can move the information around in a very different way than not on card sets. And so Gino might have brought up at some point, there's a lot of divination in this. There's I found that when you sort of put them on the cards, you can start to organize them in shapes, and it just changes the way you see things. It changes the way that you use the information. And so a lot of divination decks are kind of new age. They're a lot around spiritual ideas. But what I have is cards that are more business oriented. The language is, again, very business oriented, but we're bringing in some aspects of divination, which the two have never really come together before. And I find that people love it. Like, I have a way to make a value system in about 10 minutes that people love. And it's using a universal business model and then bringing values in as cards and divination, setting an intention, and you create a map. And it happens like this. And it's just one of the many things I got to kind of show you. Here's something called the flow wheel, where this is actually an integration between the gene keys and the inflow matrix. And I think it's probably maybe a little advanced for this, but here's an idea of, can you see that? So can you see that behind me? So if we're looking at, let's say right here, we have research, infrastructure, learning, operations, creativity, synergy, services, marketing, and stewardship. So stewardship's like a new paradigm word for management. Learning is kind of like a new paradigm word for HR. Synergy is like a new paradigm word for customer service. But each one of these actually runs on a different time cycle. That's another thing that is different about the inflow matrix, in that, like in accounting, at resources, you're looking over a period of a year, but at services, on the path, you're looking from a point of view of minutes, because that's your direct connection to the customer. So right there is where you're directly connecting to the customer, monitoring things by the minute. But down here at product development, at creativity, you're looking at it from a point of view of a season. So if we're taking into account, bring these cards into the world, wintertime is very different from summertime, is very different from fall, right? But when you're actually in here, let's say teaching the course in terms of what it is, you're going minute by minute, minute by minute. So in business, there's all these different time structures that go on that aren't really taken into account at all in the way that this does. And so that's another kind of breakthrough in terms of what it is. It's also color coded. So all of these colors always fit with the time cycle. So you know what time cycle you're in when you're in the color code. And then if you look at these words, passion at services, caring at synergy, balance at research, inspiration, imagination at marketing, achievement at infrastructure, those are the value system. This is like a full value system that starts the operating system based upon values. So it's an ethical business system. But what can happen is there's the universal model, but you can program it with, like, we have about 100 value cards. So you can actually use the values in divination or through choice to make a value system. Does anyone have any questions right now?
Yeah, Elijah, this may be a little abstract. I know you're trying to provide the kind of an overview of it all, but can we start maybe with, you mentioned you had like 6 systems that
Okay.
you could bring. And then, you know, because I think with Lucas and Laurel and Simon, they're still looking at this, and you're kind of going, given the bird's eye view, but they're looking at, you know, what are we here to do? What needs to be built? And then, you know, how do we prioritize all of this stuff?
I got you.
Oh, thank you, honey.
So one of the things I discovered just in life was I found that people talked in patterns, and you'd hear someone and they're telling a story, or you'd hear someone and they're explaining something, or you hear something, or they're always in a credibility conversation. And I started to note down what these different types of conversations were. And I came up with 72 of them, and I made a card deck of them. And so like a negotiation is very different from a design specs, which is very different from feedback, which is very different from an instructional, which is very different from a logistical conversation. So these are all, like in business, you have all these conversations that go on. And I'm sure, Simon, you're pretty aware, right, that different meetings have different structured conversations, but sometimes there isn't a codification of those types of card sets. Of those types of conversations. So what I have is a deck of 72. Gino, did you send them the card decks at all?
Sorry, yeah, I think I sent some of them, but just the ones that you had from your values ones, right? I sent them the conversation killers, I believe, and then the values one, and then I showed them the trust map, all the things that you did with Lucille that I had.
Okay. So the reason I showed you the inflow matrix is I have a card set specifically for the inner individual. It's called the choice card set, choice lenses. At the outer individual are flow lenses. At the inner group are synergy lenses. And at the outer group are harmony lenses. So these are words like economics, science, education, health, philanthropy, governance, politics. These are words that organize communities or societies. At the synergy level, which is around organizations, the inner group, you have like marketing, research, services, creativity, what I just showed you, that map. So those words apply to organizing an organization. They're structure words. Then the flow cards are like resources, activities, relationships, agreements, products, are words that organize your job. So when you put the 4 together, you're creating like a language telescope where you see 4 different levels at the same time. Now, I know that's a lot for most people, but it's tools to teach people how to think in systems. So you've got the 4 card sets that actually are utilized to organize any organization, any job, and any community. And then you got the convo cards, which are used to distinguish the type of conversation that you're in. And then you have the value cards like integrity, cooperation, love, boldness. Every spiritual tradition or every business has a set of values, which they put forward as being the main reference point for how they want to do business. So what we have here is a card set of about 100 values. And then you've got a card set of 72 conversation types that can be programmed with the values. So if I'm in a negotiation conversation and I need boldness, That's very different from using authenticity. That's very different from using honesty. That's very different from using cooperation. So I found that when you start to bring the card sets together, you create patterns that are unique, but they're brilliant. Like, has anyone heard of nonviolent communication? You've all heard of nonviolent communication? It's essentially a healing conversation with the lens of need, with the value of compassion. He built his whole book, his whole thing around that. A healing conversation with the focus of need, with the value of compassion. That's one spell of putting 3 cards together. I've got billions of spells by the amount of patterns that can be created when you start to play with these card sets, because there's about 400 cards in something I call the conscious communication card set. So there's 6 sets. There's the choice, the flow, the synergy, and the harmony. And that's kind of like its own sort of set. Then you have the convo types, and then you have the values. And so I think that every business on the planet needs this card set. There isn't a business that wouldn't do better by increasing their communication. Communication is probably one of the biggest problems in any business you go into. And so what this does is it refines specifically the type of conversation that you're in. And that's just one of the things you can do with it. But it's basically just a tool that can be used unlimited amount of ways. And again, you can build apps, you can build software. Like the convo types in software is a transformation of business communication on the planet, in my opinion. And so I'm looking at a global distribution system. I'm looking at a national distributor for the cards in every country. I'm looking at a percentage for that national distributor. I like the idea of going into China first and Hong Kong. You know, Canada, I find, is a little bit slow in terms of supporting entrepreneurs. I've got prototypes like, I don't know if you can see this, but it's on foam board. It's like the wheels on foam board, and you can take the lenses out. I've got like 10 game boards that you sit at a table and you play the game on. Like I found, like, you sort of invented a divination game where you ask a question and you turn over 3 cards, the value card, the combo type, and the lens, and you use that to answer your question. And I've done this for over 10 years. It works brilliantly. Like it every time gives you a new perspective of how to answer the question. And it teaches the mind, again, how to start to see in a different way. So I've got like a table that has 9 people, 12 people, 8 people, 6 people, 5 people, 4 people, 3 people, and 2 people. They're all at the prototype level, but I've tested them out, and it works. Like, it really works to stimulate conversations in a totally different way that doesn't exist on the planet right now. So my biggest block right now is the manual. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of sort of creativity that has come through this, and I build the tools, but I haven't been keeping up in terms of the writing. And again, I've sort of, like, after doing this for 25 years, you lose kind of touch with reality. And so I really appreciate Gino bringing you guys together, because I've been working on this alone and not funded, funding it myself, and basically doing everything I can to put it forward. But I work on multiple projects at the same time. When I get blocked, I go to another project, and I have a very hard time completing projects. And so having you,
Elijah,
yeah,
there's a thing, I guess, whatever this Zoom, if this Zoom runs out, I'll maybe start another one or something. But right now, so I've got here more of like an execution team, with this. they don't have this background. There's another guy I'd like to pull into this conversation that does magic and spells and words and everything, and he'll get this completely. And then Laurel knows Nils already too, I believe. And I could pull him on. He's here, but I've got him on WhatsApp, and we, just in terms of your words and the conversation types, because he is very clear in terms of setting up, creating containers. He'll love this and he'll get it right away. And so that's a conversation. But right now among this group, the key thing is they're looking at systems. What are the initial systems that we can bring in? And so you mentioned the different decks that you have with the different words.
Yep.
And so I think in a very practical way right now, at least for Lucas, is to look, what we're looking at is, at least for the first set, what kind of things can we do? The easiest thing that I can know that's obvious are the conversation killers, and just teaching people how to do the conversations. And then maybe kind of the conversation set in terms of your kind of value lens, et cetera. The decks that you have for that, those are like 3 different decks you were saying?
There's a values deck, conversation type, and then 4 others that are specifically around the business system. So 6 decks.
Uh-huh. And then you have ways in which they interoperate, and then you have these different game maps too, right?
Yeah.
But then you have like a system where you start with learning conversation and maybe feeling the space between, or what have you, and then having people become aware of conversation killers, and then because you have the trust map and everything too. Do you have like a stepwise way in which people can build a team or build an effective team, or use these things to build an effective team? Because I know the divination part is really designing an operating system for a whole modality of communication, which is kind of a super meta. But is there something that can be done, in a more kind of practical way where people then can explore either, Simon, and we can use it as a teaching aid, or if there's a context of a situation of a meeting, or even if we set a meeting right now, it's just, using like a meeting scheduler to schedule the time of a meeting. But if we know the type of meeting it is, my